Hi everyone, it's Lindsay. Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be sharing some very easy masking with you all. So to start off with, I am using this stamp from Crackerbox and Susie Stamps. All the supplies, everything I'm using is going to be listed down in the description box below. Now, if you are just starting off masking, I would suggest just starting off with one stamp and building up from that one stamp. I like to use florals to do this technique, but any kind of stamp that you have on hand will work. So with cling mount stamps, you want your block to be really clean whenever you try and cling them to them. You can see mine was not. So what I like to do then is just put a little bit of removable adhesive onto my block and then stick my stamp on that way. That way I don't have to go and clean my block, especially when I'm just not in the mood to clean it. Then I'm going to go ahead and ink up my stamp and stamp it onto some masking paper. Now there is paper that you can buy that is specifically masking paper. You can also use post-it notes, or you can use what I'm using here, which are label sheets. These are a little bit stickier than masking paper. That's why I like them. And I actually use these labels for printing off mailing labels like they're intended for, but I also use them to print off my stickers that I make. I will leave that video linked down in the description box below, or you can head to my YouTube channel and find it there as well. Now, I went ahead and stamped 3 of these masks, and then I cut them out. Now, the majority of the time when you make masks, you cut them directly on the black stamped line. But I did these a little bit different. I left a small white border around them. That is going to give me a really fun border around these when I go to do some ink blending later. Now, I also like to use my mask to plan out my area that I'm stamping. So you see, I just laid them on my card panel that I'm stamping onto to get a good idea of where everything would go. Now, if you are new to masking, you can go ahead and create a little map for yourself and stamp out where you want your stamps to go on a scrap piece of paper and then follow that guide. I have a good idea of where I want everything to go, so I just use my little mask as a template and then move them all aside and start stamping. Now with masking, you want to stamp the image that you want in front of everything first. For me, that was my flower in the bottom left-hand corner. So I went ahead and inked that up with VersaFine Clair and Nocturne and stamped it down in the bottom left-hand corner. Then I'm going to remove the backing paper on my mask and place it down right over the top of the stamped image. And I also went ahead and cleaned up all that extra ink that I stamped onto my craft surface as well. So whenever you're masking, it can get a little confusing where everything is and you're moving your panel around, you're moving stamps around, you're taking masks on, you might be putting them back on. So cleaning up that extra ink is really important to take care of any smudges that might happen. So each time I stamp, I'll go ahead and clean up those smudges. If you want to avoid that, just put a scrap piece of paper behind your panel that you're stamping onto. Please excuse my dirty sleeves as I'm creating here too. We have been doing a lot of painting and just a lot of things to our house, so it seems like I always have a little bit of paint or some kind of like caulk and things like that on me right now. So please excuse that. Now I went ahead and stamped down my second image there, and then I placed down my mask just the same as I did the first stamp. Now I'm going to finish up with my third and final stamp, which is going to be on the left hand side coming off the edge of the panel as well. All of these are hanging off the edge of the panel, which just gives another fun, interesting look to these stamp flowers. Now once I have this third flower stamped down, I am going to go ahead and mask this as well. Now if you wanted to, you could do a lot of different things with this panel once it's stamped. I'm going to add an ink blended background to it, but you could add a little bit of blue to the background of this, then remove those masks and color those images and get a completely different look. There are so many fun things you could do with this. I am going to leave my stamped images stark white with just that black stamping, and then I'm going to ink blend around them with some really bright, vibrant colors. I'm using VersaFine Clair inks, which are a pigment ink, and I'm using these jumbo sponge daubers to ink blend that on. I'm using two different colors. I'm using the Glamorous, which is a very, very bright, vibrant pink, and then I'm also using Monarch, which is a darker purple color. Now, pigment inks can be a little bit tougher to blend together, but if you use your sponge daubers, they're a little bit easier. And also just starting off with a very, very light hand and building up the color. So I started off with pink on the bottom left, working my way up towards the top right corner. And then from that top right corner down, I'm going to go ahead and bring in that monarch color and just blend these two colors together back and forth until I get a relatively good blend with these. Now it's not going to be perfect, but that's okay because this next technique is going to make it blend seamlessly. So I am using alcohol. Now, if you were using a dye ink like Distress Inks, you could use water for this, but because this is a pigment ink, what I need to use is rubbing alcohol. And I'm going to take the nozzle out of my spray bottle and just splatter this on. I'm also going to give a few light spritzes. This is going to give that background a little bit of a bleach effect wherever those little sprays land. It really is a fun technique. It's one you get whenever you add water to your Distress Inked backgrounds, but for this, because they are a pigment ink and they're a different formula, you need to use that rubbing alcohol. I don't blot this up. I just let it sit and dry, and then once it dries on there, it only takes a few minutes because it does dissipate fairly fast. You get this really fun bleached background. I love the look of this. Here's a closer look at it. And I added just a little bit. Of course, if you wanted a more intense look, you could definitely go in and add more. Now, once I had that done, it was time to remove the mask, and I am going to leave this as is. I'm going to leave those flowers that I stamped stark white for a very, it has a lot of contrast, this background. Now, like I said, once you get the hang of that masking, there are so many different things you could do with this panel. Now, I just showed you one thing, which is the ink blending and then leaving these white. Like I said before, though, you could easily add a little bit of light blue to the background with the mask still on, then remove the mask and color in these flowers, and that would be a gorgeous background as well. But I really love the look of this nice white flower stamped area and then that ink blended background. It really is pretty. Now, to finish off this card, I'm going to add a very, very simple sentiment. This is the Just a Note sentiment, and I stamped it onto a flag banner with VersaFine Claire and Nocturne. Now I'm going to go ahead and add this into the top right hand corner, hanging off the edge, and then I just sliced off what was hanging off on the left hand side with a pair of scissors. To finish this off, I'm going to use my Tim Holtz ruler, line it up, and then use my micron pen to draw in some faux stitching. This is a fun technique that just adds a little something to those very plain areas. I've done this on a recent card, the faux stitching, and I really love the look of it. It's something I haven't done in a long time, so I'm glad I kind of stumbled back into that technique. Now to finish this card off, I did go ahead and take that panel and mount it onto a black mat, and then I'm going to add both panels onto an A2 top folding card base. And that finishes it off. This is such a bright and fun card. I love the way it turned out, and it's something different for me. Most of the time, like I said, I would mask off those flowers, color them in, do something very, very um, pretty, but I love the brightness of this. It really is so fun. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and a look at some easy masking. That's going to do it for me today. Don't forget, all the supplies I used are listed down below in the description box. Thanks for watching and happy crafting!